The CEO is a very unique animal. I'm Alex Gertzberg, and this is CEO Confidential, where we learn about this rare breed, one heartbreak, one victory, one story at a time. This show is sponsored by the law firm of Gertzberg Licata, your ally for business growth. Chaz Moscarino, how are you?
Excellent. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for being here, man. I appreciate it. Chaz, I have to tell you something. When I was 13 years old, my dad made me go and do landscaping for a summer, right? And I freaking hated it so much. And now I think it wasn't the hard work, right? I enjoyed it then, and and it wasn't being outdoors because I really love that. It was just the back-breaking monotony of it for me, right? Like my ADD made it really hard for me to keep doing the same thing throughout the day. And those dudes that I worked for, you know, I was low man on the totem pole, so I had to like pick up the sticks so they didn't go into the lawnmowers and stuff. And so I vowed at the end of that summer never to do landscaping again unless it was for my own property, right? So my question for you is, what makes a guy say, you know what, I'm going to create the biggest landscaping company in Cleveland?
Oh, wow. Well, it started in college. I was trying to make some extra cash. And when I got out of school, I tried to go get a job, and I realized I don't do really well working for other humans. So why don't I take this little landscaping thing I have that I was doing through college and blow it up? And that's what the goal was. And my brother jumped in to help me. He was going to Kent State. I was at BW. We said, let's kind of blow this thing up so we don't have to work for somebody else. And that's what we ended up doing. We made a lot of mistakes on our way.
So you're starting this, you're 18, 19, 20 years old, right? And it's just you and your brother and a couple lawnmowers and a truck maybe, right?
Yep. Yes.
Yeah.
That's how we started.
And so just to give our listeners an idea, it is now what, 20 years later, right? 25 years later or so. And how big a company do you have today?
So yeah, we're about 20 years now. We have 2 locations, about 120 people through Northeast Ohio in the different branches. So we're in the commercial maintenance and commercial snow world, design build. We're in the facility space right now. So we've diversified, but yet we got really good in those niches that we do now.
And I have to say too, and as I mentioned earlier, I mean, I do this for really self-serving reasons, right? I interview lots of entrepreneurs just to learn from them. And I have to tell you, it is highly unusual. I mean, this is like episode close to 140 now. And it is highly unusual for me to come across an entrepreneur who is still in his 40s, or I think you and I are about the same age. We're both in our 40s, right?
I'm 39.
Oh, you're 30.
Almost.
Yeah. Who have been in the same, I mean, you're almost like a dinosaur, right? That's an extinct thing to be in the same business that you started in college 20 years later. That's highly unusual. So I'd love to hear some of the highs and lows, but I love focusing on the lows because I think that entrepreneurialism is just constant challenge, constant failure, and constant breaking through obstacles, right? For you to have done that for a 20-year period, talk about those times that you didn't think you were going to go a year or 2 years. Talk about those existential crises that you thought, 20 years is never, that's impossible.
Well, yeah, it's like I didn't know what I didn't know. So as a young 20-year-old boy, I mean, that's really what I was. I was a young boy. I didn't know what I didn't know. I was living in my parents' house. I was working out of their garage. I didn't really have a lot to lose at that point in time. So I just kept trying to make as much money as I could, kept trying to grow this thing. And if eventually my dad says, okay, you got to get out of my house, leave. I love my dad. We have a great relationship, but it was that time. So like at 23 years old, went out, tried to buy a piece of property and lived there, started using that to run the landscaping business. And, I was talking about this with someone the other day. If I could go back in time, what's one thing that I wish I would have done? I wish I would have got a strong mentor back then, because again, I didn't know what I didn't know, and I didn't have anyone to really teach me or guide me. I have that now with EO that you're aware of, but I didn't have that back then. So I had a lot of highs and lows. I was not really good at managing people. I wasn't really good at building processes or systems. All I knew how to do was drive growth and try to sell things. That was my strength. My weakness was everything else. So I stumbled. I'm still stumbling through this over the past 15, 20 years and trying to fix my mistakes and learn from my mistakes and keep growing.
Can you think of a time that can you think of a time when you didn't think you were going to make payroll?
Yeah, 08, 09. So, right, Great Recession was coming, and we were leasing a space out of Strongsville over on Progress Drive. And I ended up buying a piece of property, and I was just starting to build that property at that specific point in time when all that started happening with the recession. And it was, the phones just stopped, everything slowed up. And it was a really scary time for us, but we prevailed. We moved forward with the project. We're still out of that location as our main headquarters today. We kept pushing forward. We got through it. But that was a scary time.
Yeah, that to me is, I've said this on this show many times. That right there is the biggest difference between being a business owner and being an employee in a business, is that when the business is struggling, if you don't know the stress that comes with not knowing if you can make payroll, then you don't know my stress, right? That is a stress that only comes from business ownership, and it is a very unique kind of stress. It's that personal responsibility. I mean, we all feel responsible for our families, but when you feel responsible for your employees and their families too, that's a whole different kind of stress, So let's back up, Chaz, because one thing that you and I have in common is that we both were incorrigible delinquents growing up, right? I've talked about this. I'm not shy about it. I've been kicked out of more things than I've been allowed to stay in. And I think, I mean, I'm not a religious guy, but I think it's a miracle that I'm not in jail today and running a law firm, much less any other business. Your journey has some similarities to that. Talk about it.
Yeah, I was fortunate enough to hear your Lifeline in Forum the other day, and there was a lot of similarities. Growing up as an adolescent, rules and procedures for me were for other human beings, not me as a kid. Maybe even still today. But I went to Catholic high school, and all the rules, wearing this, a belt, having my hair in a specific position, not having a beard, all those things just drove me crazy. And so I didn't make it through Catholic high school. I got kicked out of high school senior year, in the middle of senior year, which was pretty devastating for me, to be honest. I was really excited to graduate with all my friends, and I got asked to go to public school. And so that was a really hard part and a really difficult time in my life. And I remember I made a decision to go to college, and I remember sitting there and they say, hey, look to your right, look to your left. One of you will not be here in 4 years. You're not going to make it through college. And I sat there and I'm like, okay, well, that isn't going to be me. I'm going to do everything I have to do to make sure I make it through college. And I did. And that's really what started transforming, my rebellious years as an adolescent back then.
Yeah.
It was a decision.
You did you tell me that you did like a semester at sea, and that was a part of like a personal transformation for you? Am I remembering that correctly?
So the program back then was through the Institute of, I think it was an Institute of Pittsburgh. And so anyway, I saw this on MTV, Road Rules, back in the day. Do you remember Road Rules? You ever catch that back then?
There was Road Rules, and then there was another one where they all lived in a house. They went together, didn't they?
Yeah. It was like there's these, yeah. So
Yeah.
they did this semester on this cruise ship, and I remember as a kid watching this, I'm like, oh my god, they're traveling around the world, going to all these different countries, and they're living on a cruise ship. Like I have to do that. Well, it was they had the program there at BW, so I signed up, I applied, and I was accepted into the program. And so we literally, there's 700 college students. You live on a cruise ship. We started out of Vancouver, Canada, and it was during 9/11. So actually, when 9/11 happened, I was in the middle of the ocean. I was a week into our 2-week journey to Japan. So this is right before cell phones were really going on. So we kind of had an idea what was going on with 9/11, but we really didn't have the full gravity of what was going on. And I turned 21 that week on the ship. So that's kind of how it started the journey, but it ended much more positively, and we had a phenomenal experience.
So when I went from high school to college, I became more of a delinquent, right? Am I hearing correctly that you got your shit together in college, or, and if so, how? Because I mean, one thing that I do always want to share with whoever's listening that's either a parent or a high school or college kid is that lesson, right? Was there a transformation in college, or did your delinquency, like mine, get worse?
It was literally that first day of college when I was sitting there in this room with all these college
Mm.
students, and they said, basically, half of you aren't going to make it.
I see.
And I said, well, that isn't going to be me. And so
Okay.
I did everything I could to make sure I applied myself
I see.
to be successful in college.
Chaz, um, you're in this landscaping business, and it's got its highs and lows at some point. And I would be remiss. I mean, I joined EO only 8 months ago, I guess it's been, and it's already been transformative for me. I'd heard about it for years before that. Um, I, but it's been so meaningful for me that I would be remiss if we didn't talk about it as part of your entrepreneurial journey. So talk about that. At what point do you join it, and what has that experience been like for you?
So it was funny. I was doing a lot of projects. We were doing these construction projects for all these EO members.
Mm.
And I remember I bumped into like an Aaron Grossman and several other of these entrepreneurs that were like, Chaz, why are you not in EO? And I'm like, I don't need that. I don't need that. And finally, one day, I got invited to go golfing. I'm not a golfer. They were there to persuade me to join EO. And I finally bid. I'm like, you know what? I'm going to try it. And I never looked back. I've been in for about 6 years now. And it's not only the business side that's really transformed, it's personally too. The relationships that I've made, I think, is almost even more important than how it's helped with my business. And I know you're about 8 months into it, and you've been meeting a lot of people in there too. But in the other piece of it is it's global. So my wife and I think I don't know if I told you this story, is that we just had our first baby, and my wife is a twin. She was adopted from Bulgaria. Her and her twin sister. They were adopted here when they were 3 years old. And so I wanted to surprise her and take her back to Bulgaria before we had our first child. So we did this almost month-long trip in Europe, and I surprised her, took her back to Bulgaria. And so there's an EO chapter there. So I reached out to them prior to us going. I said, hey, here's the story. Wife was adopted. Can't find the orphanage. Is there anything you can do? And the day before we were going to fly in, they actually ended up finding the orphanage, set us up a private driver to go out there. We got to meet with the gentleman who ended up being the person who raised my wife Colleen and her sister Katie until they were 3 years old. And it was a phenomenal experience. My wife was in tears all day. I mean, but that was the power of EO. Like I never would have been able to do that without EO.
You know, I don't mind talking openly about something that you heard me say at Forum the other day, which is that I always felt growing up like I didn't belong, like I stuck out, like I don't know. I always felt very different, partly because of my own immigrant status, among other reasons. But I got to tell you, I mean, I definitely over the last 8 months, you really do feel like you've got this second family, and it happens to have 14,000 people in it, right? But you really do get a sense of belonging, and it's a belonging with people who are going through the same scale issues and just business issues. And I kind of feel like I'm in that club that I've always wanted to be in, you know. I don't know, hopefully I don't get kicked out of this one. Chaz, at some point then, in that journey, you, there's like so many like twists and turns in your life that I just, I don't know. It's like, I feel like there should be good segues, but there aren't any because they're so like jagged, right?
Go ahead.
So at some point you're running a landscaping company, a wildly successful landscaping company, in your 30s that you founded, that you've grown, and you said, I think I want to get into this employee psychological assessment world, right? And you get into Culture Index, so which I don't know, in some ways couldn't possibly be more of a detour from a landscaping business, but in some ways it's all people, right?
Yeah.
And before now, people who are listening will have listened to my intro, will have heard how you walked us at my law firm through Culture Index and how amazing it is and what it is in general. But talk about how you discovered it, got into it, became obsessed with it, and now are a culture advisor, right? Culture Index advisor, is that your title?
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
Talk about that journey.
Well, one, I'm not a real warm and fuzzy culture kind of guy, so my culture at my business really wasn't that good. And, I don't get into the rainbows and butterflies and the warm fuzzy. That's just not how I'm wired. I'm kind of a naturally direct, blunt, assertive, hard-headed human being. And, I was in my forum and we were running EOS. So a lot of EOers, they use EOS. And, Alex, I was miserable going to work every day. I didn't like it. I didn't like what I was doing. And,
how long ago is this?
What's that?
How long ago was this?
About 5 years ago.
Okay.
And so I go to my forum and I'm like, I have to find an integrator to run the day-to-day of my business. I suck at it. I'm not good at it. And I don't enjoy doing it. And so they're like, hey, we've been telling you about Culture Index for years. You haven't done anything with it. And I was using all these different assessments. I used discs and I predictive index and all these other tools that I thought were really good. But what I really found out is it never really changed the way I think. So like I thought I was bringing on like top talent and bringing it into the organization, but I didn't know how to manage it. So they said, hey, talk to my guy. So I kind of did what you did. We had a half-hour conversation, and he read me back the data, and I couldn't believe what he could see within this stupid 7 to 10 minute survey. I'm like, you can see all that in 7 to 10 minutes. And so I ended up making a strategic move based off that data that I never would have made, to bring in an integrator who's still my integrator today. And I fired myself from running the day-to-day of the business because I wasn't that good at it. Became a client, and I fell in love with the human analytics of this program. I just fell in love with it. It was a cheat sheet to human beings for me. And I'm not a social outgoing person. So for me, it was a cheat sheet to humans. And so I started helping all my EO friends and my Vistage friends with the program. And I'm like, you know what? This is silly. I'm really good at this. I'm gonna continue to do this and be paid to do it. And so that's how I started into Culture Index.
So I'm sure that I didn't give it justice when I introduced it. Other than in general, Culture Index is, let's see, 4, 5, 6, 7 data points, right? Each chart has the 4, and then there's a 2, and then there's a 1. Is that right?
Well, there's 7 work-related traits.
That's it.
7 work-related traits, and to really drive 3 outcomes for CEOs is, how do I get more top line, bottom line, and scale? Which means for guys like you and me, you're about to do a big, nice vacation here at the end of the year. And I like those too. But how do you guys like you and I, how do we go on vacation with our families for a month at a time and leave your cell phone at home while your company's still growing? How do I build a team around me so I can do that? So do you own a job or do you own a company?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I keep thinking, and this is something that you and I are talking about, just the when you bring it into your company, right? And you start thinking about the ROI of something like this, right? Because it ain't cheap, right? But neither, I mean, this is what the conversation that I'm having with my leadership team right now, right? You know what else ain't cheap is making the wrong hiring decision. That is expensive as shit, right? And we have done it like every other business has done it, and it's painful. It's painful to unwind, and having. It's like everybody, ultimately gets to a place, I'm convinced, as an entrepreneur, where you decide, you know what, I'm not going to follow my gut anymore. I'm going to get more data driven. I'm going to run my business based on data instead of my intuition. Intuition will have a place, but I'm going to be a lot more scientific about it. What is the conversation that you have with your clients, your Culture Index clients, about ROI?
Well, I always start with this. It's like, Gallup does a poll every year, and I know exactly where it came in for 2019, but approximately 70% of the workforce that they survey are actively disengaged or disengaged at work. Okay, so that means that 30% of human beings go to work every day and actually enjoy doing what they're doing at work. So why the disparity, right? Why do we have over approximately 70% of the workforce that goes in every day that doesn't really enjoy what they're doing? So when we're taking square pegs and shoving them into round holes, that's what we see happening. So what we're doing, Alex, let's just say, I used this with like a manufacturing company the other day. So they have a general manager that's running this plant. What's he make? Let's say he's making $75,000 a year. And let's just say, for round numbers, he's got like 5 direct reports that work on. And those direct reports make $50,000 a year. So Gallup says that non-client facing, I believe it's non-client facing human beings that work for an organization, the cost of turnover is about 2.8 to 3.2 the annual salary expense. Okay, and I think if it goes down to client facing, it's like 5.8 to 6.7, right? So do the math. So if people leave people, they don't leave the logo. So in order for someone to be communicating appropriately together, there's about a 5% chance that the person sitting across the table from you is hardwired exactly like you are. So unless I've been trained otherwise, how do I know how to communicate to that human being? And if I have that manager that has 5 direct reports making $50,000 a year, and the cost of turnover is about 2.8 times that manager's managing nearly $750,000. They're responsible for nearly $750,000 in turnover costs. And so what have you done to ensure that manager is leading his people effectively? That's the conversation we're having.
Yeah. Yeah. My favorite example, there's an attorney here that, and I mean, I got to tell everyone here, right? It's like you have, the process is so simple as to be almost like insanely simple, like, but it's so on point. We have an attorney here, and after the 7 minutes that he spent on his survey and the minute and a half that you reviewed his results, it was like your session with us was like going like putting my whole law firm through like a chiropractic session. Like, you cracked us, you like tweaked us, and what we've done since then with this attorney, like you basically were able to say, I know how you're stressing this guy out. He needs a good checklist and then to be left alone, right? And we started doing that, right? We realized we were micromanaging him. We realized that we were stressing him out, and that's exactly what we started doing. We were just like, this is what we need done. Here's where all the checklists are. check back in with us 2 days from now. And he couldn't be happier. We couldn't be happier. And you went down the line. You went through 14 people that way in a relatively short period of time. So it works. And it was just kind of like, I don't know, it was mind boggling to watch you do your thing.
Well, and Alex, people think it's like this hiring tool, and if you're gonna,
Yeah.
that's a small piece of what it can do. That's about 10% of it. But what you just said is what it really is. It's about taking our existing people and learning how to communicate with
Right.
them better and get them in the right seats so they can get better ROI for the organization. What's it do to top and bottom line when I have engaged employees?
Yeah. Well, but let's talk about the hiring, right? Like I remember um I can't remember if this was you talking about your landscaping company or if you were describing somebody like one of your clients, but it was you were so each pattern has its own name, like trailblazer, pathfinder, consultant, right? Right? Like there's everyone's
First one, right. Yeah, there's 19 typified patterns in the program.
yeah. And I remember you describing a new hire. I think this was again, I don't know if it was you or for one of your clients, and you were like, this guy is a trailblazer, and he's sitting in a seat that needs a trailblazer. And before that seat had a trailblazer in it, it had like, I don't know, a consultant or one of the other patterns in it, right? And you described it as, when you get the right butt in the right seat, which is an EOS concept, right? It's like you're taking the brakes off, right? You're like taking the shackles off, the chains off, and and now you're truly firing on all cylinders. Is that an accurate way of describing at least how hiring is supposed to work with Culture Index?
Well, so what we do is we build, Alex, what ideal looks like for each position prior to us making those moves. So
Yeah.
based on mathematics and data, our teams will build from every position. I mean, in my organization, from the guys that cut grass all the way up to the CFO of the organization, we know what ideal looks like based off mathematics and data, and we hire towards that ideal. Now, I can't see someone's moral compass in this. I can't see if someone's crazy,
Right.
but I can tell you if they're statistically fit based
Yeah.
off that data for that position. Now, then you have to do your part and still still
Yeah.
go through the hiring process and make sure that they check all the culture buckets. But we're making good bets on the
Yeah.
front end. That's what we're doing.
Yeah. Yeah. And I keep coming back to, I wish that it was that I had used it for a couple of hires. And it would have been, gosh, it would have just made my existence so much easier. I can clearly see where we've got holes right now and where there's a mismatch. Chaz, I would also be remiss in not asking how your businesses have been affected by COVID and how you've adjusted, if at all. It's been since March, April, May, June, July, so 5 months now of different degrees of lockdowns and quarantines. What's it like for your businesses, meaning Culture Index and the landscaping business, and what's it been like for you as a business owner?
Well, so I'll start with the landscaping part. With people being home as much as they have been home on the residential side of the business, we've been busier than we've ever been. I mean, we're
Mm,
basically booked out the rest of the year. So we've been pretty fortunate there in the landscaping business in general. It's been pretty fortunate. It's been a really good year for us. We're actually up. We're up in revenue this year. The culture index, I travel a lot. And so obviously with COVID, that's really been affected. So I do a lot of
mm,
conferences. I do industry speaking events. I do EO, YPO, Vistage, all that kind of stuff. And, none of that is really happening now. And I don't know if it's going to come back this year or not. So that's suffered a little bit. So strategically, what we did though, with the landscaping businesses, we looked at COVID as an opportunity. So we actually made 3 very strategic moves on people during that time frame. So when people were getting laid off, we went to market and we started looking for top grading some talent that we needed to top grade. And we were really happy with three strategic moves that we made that I don't think we would have been able to make as quickly if it wasn't for COVID.
Have you felt well, I mean, it sounds like this question about your personal strain as an entrepreneur is moot because your business, well, at least the landscaping business is doing well. But which by the way, when I heard you say that, I thought it was counterintuitive because I would think that people who have more time on their hands and are at home more would cut their own grass more. But you're saying no, right?
It was crazy. Like when the middle of March, whenever they had the shutdowns hit, our phones, we usually average about 100 calls a week. We were getting, the first 2 weeks, we got one phone call. That was it. One phone call. So we were freaking out. And then all of a sudden, it was like a light switch got turned on, and it's been nonstop ever since.
I wonder if it was like, all right, people thought they could start mowing their own grass, and they did it for 2 weeks, and they were like, hell with this. I'm calling Chaz. All right, man. Are you ready for the lightning round questions?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, man. Here we go. So you are a professional MMA fighter. What is the song that is playing when you are walking into the ring?
Limp Bizkit.
Ooh,
Wish
interesting.
everybody had a body like me, something like that. I don't know.
I like it. What is an assumption that you had for a really long time about anything, life, business, women, anything? What is an assumption you had for a really long time that you later discovered to be totally bullshit?
That I'm going to age. The assumption was that I was never going to age, I should say.
Oh.
So I just had this mindset that I can keep partying, having fun, and that I quickly looked around my life, and I saw a lot of my friends and my brothers, my family. They were all getting married, having kids, and that was something that when I was in my early 30s wasn't important to me, and it became very quickly very important to me.
Can you think of a misconception that people have about you?
That's a tough one. A misconception, I would say. I don't know. I don't know. Maybe that I'm hard to read. Maybe that I don't like them when I walk into a room, but I'm just sometimes I'm a quiet guy when I walk in somewhere.
So you and I are both book geeks and like personal development book geeks and business book geeks in particular.
Yes.
I know you to be like crazy curious about shit. What are you most curious about right now?
Sleep.
Ooh, interesting.
Sleep. Yeah. So, as a leader, I didn't realize how important sleep was. And if I'm not firing on all cylinders, what it does to my productivity throughout the day. So I'm like crazy about my sleep schedule now. So like that's one thing I try not to give up. I want to be in bed by 10 o'clock every day. And I like being up at 5 o'clock in the morning. So, I do my meditation in the morning. I do my workout in the morning. I have my quiet time in the morning. So if I don't get my sleep, it sets me up for my next day, and without that, I'm just off.
Let's pull on. This actually is one of the lightning round questions, but it's a good segue from what you just said. So, what is a habit or routine that you do on a regular basis that has given you the most mileage?
Yeah, I'll go back to that. I think journaling. So
really?
Yeah, I really love journaling. So I'm about 3-4 years ago. I can't exactly remember when I read the book Hal Elrod, The Miracle Morning.
Yeah.
You ever read that?
Yeah, Savers. I know it well.
Lifesavers. Yeah, it really transformed my whole morning routine. I never had a morning routine, and I was not really a morning person, and I became a morning person. And I wake up early every day and I follow that routine. I meditate, I do my affirmations, I journal, I work out. And that's how I start my day almost every single day now. It's really transformed my life.
When you journal, do you have prompts or is it total free form stream of consciousness journaling?
Yeah, great question. So I start with I start with what I'm grateful for. And sometimes that's hard. So I'll try to do 3 things that I'm grateful for every morning when I write. And I mean, it's literally right here. Here it is. I every morning, that's where I'm at. And so I start 3 things I'm grateful for, and then I'll kind of just go free flowing from there.
Yeah.
And the other thing is I'm trying to write for my daughter too. So I started another journal for my daughter.
Um, I want to stay on this topic for another minute or so and encourage everybody, if you do only one thing as a result of this episode right here, start that habit for about 1,000 different reasons. But one reason to do it is, Chaz, and tell me if this is. Do you ever go back and read any of your prior entries?
All the time. Yeah.
So for me, I read them and I'm like, holy shit, I never would have remembered that that happened or that I felt that way at that time. I feel like that habit, that journaling habit, has solidified the permanence of my life. Everything is so temporary from a recollection standpoint, but that's like one of my favorite aspects of it. You find that to be true?
Oh yeah, like we were on a ski trip 2 years ago, and we were sitting here last month talking about the ski trip, and they're like, "Hey, do you remember the guy we met on the mountain
Yeah.
that did this, this, and this?" I'm like, "I don't remember his name, but I guarantee you it's in my journal. Sure as heck, it was right in there."
Yeah.
And like, oh, it was this, and this is what we did that day. Remember we did this? I'm like, I totally forgot all of that.
At that ski trip, were you dropped out of a helicopter?
Unfortunately, that one I was not, but I am an avid heli skier.
Um, that is bananas to me, right? That is on my bucket list for sure. Um, uh, you must, well, shit, you must be a really good skier, right? Because I mean, that's fresh track, that's top of the mountain, that's, avalanche risk, right? I mean, that's serious shit.
It is. It's not like you're not literally jumping out of a helicopter, and when you're skiing in like literally 3 feet of powder, it's a different type of skiing than when you're on a regular mountain. But yeah, I can hold my own with skiing. I love it. I go out to Jackson Hole every winter. They have a steep and deep camp out there, and so I get to ski with some really good skiers. But man, I don't feel when I feel. Let me just put it this way: when I'm skiing is when I feel the most free. It just frees my mind.
Did I tell you my collarbone story?
No, tell me.
So 2.5 years ago now, I was in Alta, in Utah, and I was at the top of the mountain, and I was not and have never been a really good mogul kind of a guy, right? I like going straight downhill as fast as possible, and I about halfway through our second day, I turned around to the dude I was skiing with and I go, "Hey man, I think I got this mogul shit down," right? And I started cutting and I zigged when I should have zagged, and then I was like, "Oh," and then I start tumbling and I start hearing bones cracking. Dude, I was that guy that had to get sled down by ski patrol, right? That you always see when I had to be strapped in. There were these two beautiful ski patrol women that I was like strapped down, and they were skiing me down, and I thought I was going to throw up all over myself from the pain, you know? And I was just like, all I could think of was, all right, don't puke on yourself in front of these girls. Do not puke on. So I now have a titanium plate in my collarbone, and that was the last time I skied. That's my collarbone story. Chaz.
Yes, sir.
Describe a time when you had a massive personal or business failure and how you bounced back from it.
So I made a real estate investment down in Florida right when '09 hit again. So I thought it was a great idea to buy more real estate, and I was buying at the top of the bubble.
Yeah.
And you already know what happened. So I put all this money into this piece of property, and 3 months after I put lots of money down into this thing, the whole world ended up flipping upside down, and I literally lost everything that I had into it. And that was a really hard lesson to learn. And but I've come back from that. I've made more real estate deals, but that one really hurt.
Let me ask you a follow up question to that. Was there a was there how long did that haunt you? Right? How long did you obsess over it? And maybe you still are. I don't know, but like, what was there? What was the period of time when you were like totally just stuck before you became unstuck?
I'll tell you, put it this way. I didn't buy another piece of real estate for probably I think it was about 6 years after that. So I was a little gun shy, to say the least.
But were you?
Losing
Yeah,
that much money, that stuck with me for a while. That definitely stung.
yeah. But were you able to like say bad decision, let's move on right away, or were you like I mean, I talk about this all the time. I still not a day goes by that I don't re-litigate the one trial I lost. I'm just like so just I still my wiring still goes there sometimes. I shouldn't say not a day goes by, but it um was that the kind of decision that was just like kind of emotionally sticky for you for a period of time, or were you able to just sort of say, I screwed up, now we move on?
I didn't lose sleep over it. I was more like, hey, I screwed up. Let's make sure that doesn't happen again.
Okay,
Let's
good.
learn the lesson.
Yeah, that is a key skill right there. I mean, we make big bets in as entrepreneurs, and when you make a lot of big bets, some of them don't pay off, and those are big losses. So having that skill to be unstuck is huge, I think, and not a lot of people have it. Chaz, if you could ask one question of anyone who ever lived, who would it be, and what would you ask them?
And I'm not good at this one. That ever lived. The guy. It just made me funny because this morning I was watching a video on Mike Tyson. He's about ready to go do this fight again, and I'm just like,
I
man.
heard that.
I
Yeah.
was thinking about when he fought Holyfield when he bit his ear off. Um, it just kind of came to mind this morning. And I'm like, what the hell was he thinking when he bit into his ear and spit it out in the ring and
Yeah.
said, I'm going to eat your children? I mean, I don't know. So
That's a good question, actually. I think actually he's talked about it. I think that question may be out there. The answer to it may be out there already. I just heard that he's coming back. How old is that dude? He's got to be in his
50 something, I think.
geez. I mean, Foreman was really old. Buster Douglas was pretty old, I think. But yeah, I mean, good for Don King if he's part of that, man. That's a great audience he'll have.
Hey,
That's good pay
I'm
per
going
view.
to watch.
Yeah. What is the non-religious book or author whose words you apply the most in your life on a day-to-day basis?
The Seven Habits.
All right.
I really, really enjoy that book. And, it's got to be a win-win, as Stephen Covey says. If it's not a win-win for both parties, it's no good. So I really enjoy that book. I think Steve Covey he's a great author.
Okay, free association. I'm going to say a word and then you tell the story. Spike strips.
Oh man, you're gonna put me on the spot with this one. So you want me to tell the story?
Go, do it, man. This is a great story.
So my wife and I, we live in a secluded property. We're on about 24 acres, and we're tucked back. So we have a long driveway coming back there, and so we have sensors around the property and alerts. So if anyone walks on or drives on the property, alerts the house like a doorbell. And so in the middle of the night, about a month ago, it went off at 2 a.m. And so we checked the camera, and there's a black Jeep Cherokee in the driveway, and there's a group of men running up to the front door. So they ran up, didn't do anything, jumped in the Jeep, took off. So we think, maybe it's a doorbell ditch. Just notify the police. Just say, this is what happened. So my wife's a little uneasy. We have a 6-month-old baby, and in the house as well. The following weekend, the same Jeep Cherokee rolls up, alerts the house. We wake up. They don't know that we're up, and I run outside to go after them. They take off. and we have no idea what they're doing. Like, why? It was like 3 a.m. Why are you at the house? So I'm telling my friends about this. I'm like, what possibly could these human beings be doing at our house 2 weekends in a row at that hour in the morning? Are they canvassing the place? What are they doing? And my one buddy's like, hey, why don't we just build? Why don't we just build? There was that driveway alert, by the way, that just went off. So someone just pulled in the driveway. Why don't we build tire strips and we'll put it out there. If he comes back, we'll run it all over and we'll flatten out his tires and call the police and catch the guy. So I'm like, great idea. So we build this thing. The guy comes back Sunday night. I didn't think he was going to show. I'm sleeping on the couch. I'm ready for him. My wife and I have a game plan. I'm like, hey, if he comes, you call the police. You turn the surveillance lights on. I'm going to run outside, which I probably shouldn't have done, to try to catch this guy. So he comes in, flattens out all his tires, and he drives off on his rims. I couldn't catch him. Police show up, and we cannot locate this guy. So I go on a mission.
Hold on.
Go ahead.
Hold on. You skipped over an important key fact here. You chased this dude in your underwear.
I'm sorry. Yes, I am in my underwear at this point.
And you're like, I mean, if it were me, right, I'd be like, man, I don't know what kind of psychopath this guy is, right? But you're like, I'm out of here. Honey, lock the door. And you're in your Speedos driving down the street, chasing this dude with blown out tires. That's bananas to me.
Well, and I couldn't get out of my driveway because when he hit the boards, they went up into his wheel well, exploded. So there's nails all over my driveway. Yeah. So I have to clean up the mess, and I go after trying to chase this guy. It became to a point, Alex, is that we couldn't sleep comfortably because we didn't know what this guy was up to. I mean, it was really becoming a big deal. Like, can't sleep at night. We don't know if this guy's going to show up with his guys. What are they doing at our house in the middle of the night? So it was really, we were living on edge. It wasn't fun. And my wife was not happy. I had to hear about it every single day. So you don't want to live with your wife with a 6-month-old that's on edge every day, wondering who's at the house, not wanting me to leave to go to work. So I went after him, couldn't find him, and I was in my underwear. Yes, the police ended up pulling me over because I have a black Jeep as well. I'm like, hey, it's not me. We're going after the other guy.
Yeah. So, and ultimately, right, you found a black Jeep Cherokee with its tires blown out sitting in a driveway.
Yes, we ended up finding him throughout the afternoon. The police came and they cited him for trespassing, but at least we know who it is. Hopefully it's all done now. And it was a good story for the past 4 weeks.
Yeah, thank God. The moral of the story is do not mess with Chaz. He will blow out your tires. Bare minimum. That's the craziest. That's insane. All right, Chaz, we're going to wrap this up with the final couple of lightning round questions. The irony of the lightning round is that there's nothing fast about it. What is the metric you use at the end of the day to determine whether you've had a good day?
A good day for me, the metric is if I can spend time with my wife and my new little baby girl, and be home at a normal hour for me, which is like 5:30. If I'm home at 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock, I don't get quality time or family time with them. That really hurts me.
Okay. The final, and some would argue the most stressful lightning round question is, what is an embarrassing thing about yourself that only a few people know? And for extra credit, for bonus points, that no one else knows?
Well, what my close friends know is that I always forget to zip my fly. So I go to the bathroom and I just am so obsessed with washing my hands before COVID, and I just never zip my fly. So my fly is always down. You'll catch me all the time, Alex. It's always down. That's
a good one. You're not going commando, I hope?
No, I'm not commando. I get laughed at all the time from my family and friends. Like, oh, your fly's down again. I'm like, yeah, I'll get that. I'm sorry.
That's hilarious.
Yeah.
Do you want to go for bonus? Do you want to go for bonus points? I mean, that's a pretty good one.
Yeah. That no one else knows. Something embarrassing about myself. I don't have one yet. Nothing's coming to mind. I would give you one. I just can't think of it.
Well, you scored highly with the fly being down answer,
you.
so that's very acceptable. Chaz, this was awesome. Thank you for doing this. I appreciate it. Is there anything that I should have asked you that I didn't ask? Is there anything that you would want to get out to the universe? Anything you're working on? Anything that's important to you that you'd like to blast out there before we adjourn?
Well, no, if you're a CEO, I guess if you're CEO and you're not in a good peer group, then EO is, I think EO is a really, really powerful group. It's really transformed my life personally and professionally. And if you're a CEO and you're utilizing EOS, I think culture index for me and many of my clients, it's been its secret sauce. And if you ever want to take a test drive and see what's under the hood of your team, feel free to reach out to me and I'll give you a complimentary, demo for culture index and see if it's a good fit for you or not.
Yeah. And so folks, wherever you're listening to the sounds of our voices right now, if you scroll down, you should see links to Chaz, his contact information, to his website, his LinkedIn, I'm sure is in there too. And Chaz is extremely generous with his time, was for us. And really provides like transformative information about your people, about you. So I would encourage you to take advantage of the opportunity to talk to him. Chaz, I appreciate it, man. Thanks so much, buddy.
Thanks for having me, brother.
All right, man. Thank you. Later. Folks, thanks for listening. We're going to catch you next time. Thanks for listening to CEO Confidential. I hope you enjoyed it. Visit us at ceoconfidential.net and visit our sponsors, the business law firm of Gertzberg Licata and Cover My Six, a business solution that flushes out and repairs legal minefields before they blow up in court. We'll see you next time right here for another episode of CEO Confidential.